looking for a game that mixes magic and twin stick shooting? If you answered yes, check out my review of Triggerwitch, coming up next on Mumbles. Just stay over there, Miss Witch. It's all good. We're all good. Hi everyone, Mumbles here. Today we review a game that decided to take twin stick shooting and add a nice little story to it, mixed in with a little witchcraft. Today we review Triggerwitch. We are first going to briefly cover the description of this game. We will then move on into my gameplay section where I tell you guys the basic information about the game, and we will finally sum it up with some cons and then give an overall arching score for this review. Let's start first with that brief description. Description-wise, this game reads, Triggerwitch is a stylized 2D twin-stick action game set in an odd open world where magic is outdated and firearms are the new way of life. Imagine that. Players assume the role of Colette, a prospective graduate from the Stock, an academy for witchcraft and trigger-tree. After a mysterious being invades her realm, events are set in motion that trigger Colette's life upside down, casting her as a sole heroine with enough firepower to restore peace. At the time of this review, this game can be picked up for all major systems, including PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, Xbox Series X, for a price of $14.99. We are reviewing this thing today on the Xbox Series X, so be aware of that. We now move on into my gameplay section, but before I do that, I gotta ask, please subscribe to MumblesVideos, and thank you guys all so much for the support. You're amazing. On to my gameplay section. So we come now to the gameplay section, and gameplay-wise, this game very much is a classic twin-stick shooter. Basically, that means one controller stick controls your character, and the second controller stick controls where your character aims. So it is very much a twin-stick shooter, and it very much does live up to that idea that twin-stick shooters have laid out. So basically, run around, kill enemies with your guns. But in addition to that, this game also does have some RPG elements as well as puzzle elements added to it. You have all different sorts of guns and things you can use while playing this game to effectively get rid of enemies, and you can strategize how you want to do that. In addition to that, it does also have those puzzle aspects I talked about. Things such as hitting things in a certain order in order to open up a certain area, or rushing past various obstacles that are in your way so as to not damage yourself. These things are put in your way, and they are present throughout the entire game. How this game is presented. You play as this witch, you have all sorts of enemies always coming at you, you're shooting at them, you're trying to stay away from them, and you're trying to stay alive. A very simple concept for a game, but they absolutely positively did a fantastic job of creating an environment that feels nice to be in and is just pretty as you look at it. We do now move on into the cons, and the biggest con that this game has is its repetition. When you first start out this game, you are introduced to a lot of new things. You know, new areas, new enemies, new puzzles, all sorts of different things. But as you progress and get about halfway through this game, you start to feel a lot of repetition, a lot of the same puzzles, a lot of the same enemies, a lot of the same things you're doing over and over again. Repetition really is what holds this game back, in my opinion. That is the biggest problem with this game, probably the only real big problem that I have with this game. And that sums up the cons. So we now come to the score section. I have to say, Triggerwitch presents a very interesting little story with some very solid gameplay action in it. The controls work great, and everything about it controls great. It is one of the better twin-stick control-wise games that I have seen. It is one of the more interesting twin-stick control games that I have seen. The story does itself a real service in making this game work. But my problem with it is that repetition. The repetition really kills this game for me. If it was a shorter game that, you know, it didn't have all this repetition, I would actually be more inclined to give it a higher score. But because the repetition starts about halfway and pretty much goes all the way through to the end, that's a downer for me. So on today's episode of Mumbles, I gotta grade it with that in mind, and I am giving this game a 6 out of 10 from me. Anyways, guys, this has been my review of Triggerwitch. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Please smack that subscribe button, smack that button, smack all those buttons, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.